Hi everyone, Azriel Knight here. Welcome to Darkroom Nights 2022. This is part 6, the final part of this series for the year. You could call it the season finale. If you were around for the last episode, then you know that I talked about my main 35mm camera, the Nikon F100, and my thoughts on it after using it for a full year. As of this recording, the video's only been published for a couple of hours. It's doing pretty well. It's getting a lot of engagement, and I think that you should check it out if you've got the time. I'm especially proud of all the photos that I posted on there in a slideshow. You know, you see all the duds, but then you go back and you cherry pick all the good ones and you realize, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this photography thing. So please check it out. I'll leave a link in the description. I'll also leave a link to the playlist for this series. In this season finale, I am going to be discussing Fuji Neopan 1600. I'm going to be printing 2 photos here in the darkroom today. Let's get started. So Fujifilm Neopan 1600 was actually discontinued in 2009. The 35mm roll that I got was donated to me by a viewer. So of course it probably expired, you know, the newest it is probably 2011. So a couple of years after it was discontinued. But I had a loose canister, so I can't be 100% sure when it did expire. I tested my roll of Neopan 1600 while I was in Vancouver with my wife on our anniversary. Let's take a look. So by total coincidence, while I was choosing my favorite black and white images of 2021, I picked 2 images from this roll, which is really interesting because, as you're about to find out, the negatives don't look all that great. Both of these images were taken in and around sunset. Now this first image is 2 men on a bench in a park, and I'm just walking down the street and I see this amazing scene of these 2 guys on a bench, and there is this beautiful light just rimming around both of their heads, and I just swivel and I snap. And as I mentioned last episode, one of the things I love about autofocus cameras is just being able to take the shot and move on without having to fiddle fart with manual focus and manual settings. Now, one thing that's going to immediately strike you as interesting is that this image is really punchy. It is got blacker than blacks and then just like almost sheer white. And it really works for this image. I love the way it looks. I've already printed it off once. It's a very printable image. It does need a little TLC, I guess you could say. I believe I did a split tone when I did my test print of it last week, but it is a beautiful image, and it's one of those things where it is not the type of exposure that I would have chosen. And I've mentioned this throughout the series. My f100 required servicing during the time when a lot of these photos were taken, so it was a bit hit or miss. And this isn't an exposure I would have chosen. And sometimes when you have a situation presented to you like this, like settings that you normally wouldn't go for, in my case, the light meter wasn't working properly, you actually end up with something really amazing, something that you normally wouldn't do on your own. Now I want to be able to reproduce this effect in the future. I also really love how the tree frames the image. It even goes around the lamppost. Like, I can tell you that I wasn't sitting here for 5 minutes trying to figure out the shot. I just turned, snapped, and moved on. And as I've mentioned once before, with my shot of the homeless man a few episodes ago, sometimes the reflex shots are the best shots because you're not overthinking it. So the second image is an abandoned couch, of all things, underneath a bridge. I believe this is called Burrard Street Bridge or Burrard Bridge or something. I've also touched on abandoned objects in my video redefining abandoned photography, and this falls into that category. Like, who leaves half a couch? I mean, this thing looked brand new. You can even see the plastic beside it. I also love how it's got this simple background with really clean lines, and I wasn't even sure if this was gonna work, if this image was even gonna be able to be exposed properly because it was so dark under there, and I've just got the light coming from the one side. But again, so happy with it. The couch is really well exposed. I don't believe too many details are blown out in it. And of course, most importantly, it's a sharp shot. I didn't bottom out my shutter speed trying to get a proper exposure on this. I did end up taking 2 frames of this, and here's the other one, but I prefer the one that we're going to print today. But yeah, strange. I love photos, and I believe I've sort of said this already in this series, but I love photos that tell a story by not telling you the story, by leaving a mystery. So what I mean is that there is a story here, that there's a story of somebody who bought a couch and then left it under this bridge and then just buggered right off. And we don't know what that story is. And looking at the photo just sparks that creativity. Like, why did they leave it? Was their apartment too small and it was like a 3 or 4 piece sectional and this was the piece that didn't fit? Were they moving out and they couldn't get this piece into the van? What is going on? I have no idea. I've got no idea. But let's move on here and take a look at the negatives. So here are the negatives from that day, and as you can see immediately, these aren't the greatest results. I think between using expired film and having a meter that wasn't working properly, we've got some really dull looking negatives with some strange results. I apologize, it looks like some of these negatives are actually flipped upside down, but the negatives that I'm going to be using today are right here. And where is that other one? Aha, right at the top here, also upside down, right here. So there are the 2 men on the bench. You can see that a lot of it is blacks with unrecoverable detail. The couch one, though, is a little bit better, a lot better actually. Whatever was going on with the rest of this roll, this is probably one of the better balanced negatives. A whole lot of detail to be had here. Really happy with this one. And like I said, this one here, happy accident. Today I'm going to be using an expired paper developer. This can of Kodak Selectol was donated to me by a patron by the name of Jack Askey. And they sent me some diaphine. Is it diaphine or diaphin? Anyway, they sent me some of that. They sent me a few cans of Dectol, and they sent me a can of this Selectol. So I've already made it. I took some B-roll here to show you the process of mixing it all together. I used my sous vide, and it required me to warm up 1.9 liters to 90 Fahrenheit. And then I opened the can with a regular old can opener. You can see the contents on the inside here. Looks quite interesting. And then I mixed it all together and it came out like root beer. So that's kind of a red flag, but it's not a deal breaker. This is probably still usable. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that the canned stuff really does last. I will be printing on Ilford Multigrade RC Deluxe Pearl. I have some random Ilford Multigrade 4 Pearl in my paper safe here. This bad boy here. But I don't know if I have enough for a full run. I just hit the lights and I open it up and it's feeling pretty thin. So it's going to be the Deluxe Pearl right here. This is a 25 sheet set, and cutting it to 5x7s means that there's a total of 50. And I mean, I've used some of it already, but I believe there'll be enough here. If not, then I'll be going back to this lovely Deluxe Glossy. Those of you who watched the first episode know that I have decided not to do any fiber-based printing this time around because of the massive headache that it gives me. And I don't mean that literally, I mean that metaphorically. I do have enough paper, but you might see some, well, you're definitely going to see some repeats today. Alrighty folks, here is my first test strip. I made this using a contrast level 3 with 1 second intervals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Well, first off, we know that the expired Selectol works, and it works like a dream. It produced a fine image within the 2-minute developing time that I put it in. And so I looked at this and I said, I want something between here and here, because I like how there's detail on the couch at this 4-second mark, but I like how the brick wall behind the couch looks at the 5-second mark. So 4.5 seconds was the exposure for me. Now let's take a look at the first print. I think this looks amazing. I'm going to go ahead and throw up a final scan in post-production so you can get a better look at it. But 4.5 seconds to me at a contrast level 3 worked out really, really well. You got detail on the couch, you've got nice dark detail up top here, you've got what looks to me like a proper shadow to the right of the couch, and it just looks great overall. The only thing, there's the tiniest little speck right there. I am going to pull the negative out and see if I can find that bad boy and send him on his way. However, if for some reason I can't get that out, I don't think that it's the end of the world. This might end up in the final prints. The other thing that I should mention is that this is Ilford Multigrade for Pearl. When I went back to my Polymax paper safe and counted, there were 19 5x7s left, enough for me to print a set. I'm actually planning on just exposing the whole rest of the pack, and I'll have extras for patrons or people who donate film or, you know, contest winners and all that kind of stuff. Really happy with this. You know, I guess it makes sense. Part 6, you know, been doing this for like a week now with, you know, only a day or two off. Yeah, I'm bound to get into a rhythm of things. So I'm going to print the rest of these, let them dry overnight, and then I will see you in the morning for the other photo. All right, folks, it's the next morning, and I kind of boo-booed. I made a bit of a mistake here. I'm going to show you one example. Don't take this exposure seriously because I didn't remove the fixer, so a lot of these images have been darkened overnight. But what's important here is that the image is crooked because I didn't mount it to the easel properly. And I didn't do that once. I didn't do it twice. I did it like 6 times. I don't know what I was thinking. Normally I get 1, maybe 2 in the batch that are crooked. You know, if I make 15, 20 prints, normally I'm a little off by 1 or 2, but that is a serious malfunction. And what I need is 11 prints for the set. And what I ended up with was 12. So it's 4:21 a.m. and I just finished talking to the camera for 5 minutes before even hitting the record button. So that's how my day's going so far. Anyway, the other problem that I wanted to mention here is that I've got 2 sets of prints here. And these prints here, these 5, they have that speck of dust that I mentioned on it. And the mistake I made is that I made 4 prints at a time before checking to see if the speck of dust was still there after blowing off the negative, and it still was. I got the initial print where I found the speck, and then a set of 4 because I print them 4 at a time with the speck still on there. So a total of 5. The good news is I do have my 11 that I need for the box set. The bad news is that some of the prints in this edition will have the tiny little speck on it. Now, I really don't think that the people that are buying the box set from me are going to care. If anything, they might think it's a feature. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put the first prints no spec, and then, you know, like the 1 of 11, 2 of 11, 3 of 11 no spec, and then the remainder spec, or if I'm going to randomize it. I'm sort of leaning towards randomizing it. I'm disappointed that I got so many prints crooked. It's not something I normally do, but I'm going to get these into the box set, and then I'm going to move on to the final print for this series. Okay, folks, I've done a bunch of test strips this morning, and I've done so many, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep it straight here, but I'll try. This first test strip was a contrast level 0 at 1 second intervals. I looked at it, and I said, I wonder if I can get away with a single filter exposure instead of doing a split tone, which was my original plan. So then I did this test at 1/2 contrast filter, so 0.5. And I looked at it and I was like, nah, that doesn't really work for me. Like, this would have been about the exposure here, maybe this, but I just felt it didn't work. So the next thing I did was a split tone test, and honestly, I can't remember if I did the 0 or the half contrast and then the 5, but it immediately got way too dark. So then the next thing that I decided on was this right here, which was going back to the zero contrast filter to rate about here, I believe. Actually, more like here, 3 seconds. Because this is 2. I did 2 at the very beginning, then 1 second intervals after. Sorry if I forgot to mention that. It's been a long week, but I did 3 seconds, and then I did 1 second intervals on the 5 after the 0, and I thought this right here was good. This shows a little bit more detail, but to me the blacks aren't black enough. And this isn't a shot about detail. Like you saw the negative, there is no detail in the blacks, so I shouldn't even bother. So what I ended up with for the first test print was 3 seconds and 3 seconds, which is great. It makes it so much easier to expose because I don't have to reprogram the enlarger every time I switch filters. Both ended up being 3 seconds. I think this is going to be the final print. Now you'll probably see here that there is a bit of a blown out highlight area here, and the lamppost is a little bit meshing in with the background, but that's not really the main subject. The main subject are these two guys, and there is that perfect rim light around them both. So I believe this is what I'm going to end up with. 3 and 3. 3 at a contrast 0, 3 at a contrast 5. If I didn't mention already, I decided to go with Ilford Multigrain RC Deluxe Glossy. Yeah, I really like this paper, and because these photos are going to be handheld, that's the idea of them. You take them out of the box, you hold them in your hand, you admire them. I think Glossy works out really well for that. Well, folks, the prints are dry, they look fantastic, and as soon as I get the data sheet written up and printed off, the box sets will be complete. But before I show you the photo, I'd like to thank a few people. First off, I'd like to thank my patrons. You guys are amazing. This channel would not exist without you. I mean that. I would not be able to produce the quality that I do without my patrons. Thank you so much. I'd also like to thank everybody who did a PayPal donation throughout this series. This time I wrote it down so I wouldn't miss anybody. Thank you to John, Maurice, Martin, Dennis, Cameron, another John, Dennis a second time. Dennis donated twice. Amy, Brendon, Stefan, and Fenna. These people made a combined donation of over $300, and man, that is so incredibly generous. And I let you guys know throughout the series that these donations would let me know that you guys were interested enough for me to do this again next year. And, you know, I will probably do this again next year. I'd also like to thank my 3 pre-order purchasers. That's 3 people who bought the box set at half price plus free shipping. That's Jonathan, Andreas, and Fenna. Thank you so much. This was great. This was way better than last year. And part of that is obviously because of you, and part of that is because I did some pre-planning and I learned a lot from last year's mistakes, and I'm just really happy with the way this turned out. For the final contest, in order for you to possibly get a free print from this, no requirement actually whatsoever except going to the Discord, going to the channel, and just type in entry, and I'll just pick somebody at random. Enough delaying though, here is the photo. I am very happy with the results. It looks just how I imagined it. Like honestly, overall, the way that it turned out being super, super contrasty, that's what really makes this photo. It is a really cool shot. So happy with it. And again, here's the first shot, just in case you forgot that this was a 2 photo episode. I almost did. It's been a couple of days on my end, just getting super burnt out here, trying to make a strong finish. But yeah, there's the first photo again. Also, amazing shot. Kind of hard to believe that these two photos were shot on the same roll, to be honest. I'm pretty sure that's everything, though. I can't think of anything else. I will superimpose now some B-roll of what the box set looks like and some of the insides and the data sheets. I printed all of the information on each photo on vellum, which is painstaking because I have to feed, well, first I have to cut these sheets into 5x7s, and then I have to feed them one at a time in the printer because the ink rests straight on top of the vellum and it requires time to settle, so I can't stack these right away. So I've got to place them all throughout my desk, and sometimes the printer eats them, and yeah, it's a real pain in the butt, but it's worth it because it looks amazing in the end. If you are interested in buying a box set, I will leave the pre-order link up for a little while, a few more days or whatever, as this video gets its initial views, but then the price goes to regular price, which is $2.99 Canadian plus shipping. And you might think that's a little steep, but it is 8 5x7 darkroom prints, limited edition, with a box, and I think it's a pretty conservative number when you think about it. It ends up working out to being less than $40 per print. I think that's a really good deal. But yeah, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this series. I certainly did. If you would like to support this channel, you can always support me on Patreon. You get things like early access, free prints, and your name in the credits. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And until next time, stay classic.
Might be a bit